I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease last year at the age of 19, and I was told I was going to need to have a partial bowel resection. So I had that done in June, and 2 days later, I became very unwell. They knew I had some sort of infection, but couldn't quite gauge what was going on. And my surgeon came back round, reviewed me, and said he was okay for us to try and wait and see how it goes, like blast it with antibiotics, and then in the morning we'll review again. He got his colleague to come and check, and they were all happy to watch and wait. And then about 10 minutes later, they were back in, emergency buzzer, telling me that I had sepsis and that I needed to go back into surgery straight away because I was in septic shock. It's then later on I found out that I had that there was a bacteria from inside of the gut had leaked from the join of the bowel, and that had turned my entire abdomen septic. So I had to have 2 drains put in so that it could drain out all the septic fluid. I had to have a washout. And yeah, so what was going to be a relatively smooth 4 or 5 day recovery from this operation ended up being a lot longer under the care of the intensive care team, and then learning to live around sepsis. So I was in a side room, and as far as I'm aware, I was under the care of the intensive care team for a few days. And then I stayed in that side room for about 2 weeks, I think. Yeah, it's all a bit of a blur. I think all of the pain medication doesn't help with the memory and the brain fog. I was awake for most of it, but I was sedated. I had a lot of medications, mainly to deal with the pain. It was a really big operation, and I couldn't move after it. It was a lot of my body, and to have that twice in the space of 48 hours. So I was on some pretty intense opioids, which sort of just knocked me out. So as I said, I was 19 and I was at university, living life to the full, having the best experience ever. And then about 3 months into uni, I became really unwell, and that's when they diagnosed me with Crohn's, and I had to have the operation. So I had to move home from university. I had to finish the last part of the year from hospital and from home. I had to do it online. And then they told me that the hospital where I was having my surgery wasn't super close to home, so it was about an hour drive, 45 minutes an hour. And so I saw my mum and my dad every day. They came and saw me every day, but I couldn't see friends. And I just remember on that day them basically saying that I was going to have to say goodbye to mum, to dad. And I think dad was in a meeting or something over in Brighton, which is a good like hour and a half from where we were. And so I didn't get to see him, and I remember that playing on my mind a lot, thinking, oh my God, like I can only see mum. Like I couldn't see any of my friends. I was so unwell that it's not like I could text or give them a call. So it was just my mum there, and I think she definitely went through a big feat that day as well. The recovery was more focused around recovering from the bowel surgery as opposed to recovering from the sepsis. So in terms of like recovering from the bowel surgery, it was like just learning how to sit back up again and how to walk, because all of that, like it was so incredibly painful that I had to walk with like aids, or it was a wheelchair for a while. And then it was things like learning how to eat again, because essentially with the surgery my bowel had gone to sleep, so we had to wake it back up by introducing lots of small amounts of food, but I couldn't really tolerate much. And once I'd sort of like got the worst of the physical recovery done, it then came that like mental recovery, and I don't think that really hit until like physically I was a bit better. And so I started to sort of like ask questions about what had happened, because I didn't really remember a lot about it. And then I became really unwell again, and my wound opened itself back up and became infected again. And so I think that was open for about 15 weeks in the end. And unfortunately, my Crohn's came back in the remainder of the bowel 12 weeks after the procedure. So back in for hospital treatment for that. And so then the physical recovery started again. So I felt like it was very much a roller coaster. It's a tricky one, because I don't feel like the practitioners potentially did it justice. So it was like they told me about the sepsis when I was in septic shock and then never really mentioned it again. It was all very much focusing on like recovery from the bowel surgery and the Crohn's, and no one actually mentioned sepsis to me at all for probably 6 or 7 months. And so that mental recovery, it was very much me trying to piece together these like hazy memories and being conscious of, I wanted to ask my family questions, but not so much that it triggered them. And then sort of feeling like I'm questioning myself and doubting myself because I'm not really sure what's going on. And then it's sort of like hitting you that actually you did have sepsis. It was a really big thing to go through, facing mortality at 19 years old, with the prospect of, you know, not having the rest of your life ahead of you. It's massive. And I think the change to my life was that it just shook me to the core. Like the core of who I am completely changed. Like it makes you reevaluate your values, your goals, what's important to you. You know, it's suddenly, there's so much in life that suddenly feels so trivial when you've gone through something like that. And I think a lot of that like mental process and that mental healing, I think, is ongoing. I don't think I'll ever really fully heal from that. I think it's an ongoing process, but it's one that's very lonely, because not many people around you have gone through something like that. But also, I was 19 years old. There was no one around me that had gone through even something comparable in any way. And so it is a very isolating experience, which is when I came across the UK Sepsis Trust, and they were amazing. I spoke to Emma and Oliver, who, I think they couldn't really believe what had happened at such a young age, and then also that there'd just been no support afterwards. And I'm so glad I found them, because they encouraged me to join the recovery support and connect groups, which I did. And it was one of the best things I've done, because all of those like really confusing feelings suddenly didn't feel as isolating, because I had a group of people around me that got it. And also they could sympathize with the fact that I was going through what they were going through, but at such a young age. And so I am really grateful for the UK Sepsis Trust. I would say try it. Just, there's no obligation. Come to one session, even if you have your camera off, your microphone off, and you don't speak at all. We don't mind if you're just there observing. I think just try it, because it really surprised me. I thought that I was going to be going onto a group that was full of really depressing, morbid, older people that didn't get it. And actually there's a mix of ages, a mix of backgrounds, and also a mix of severity. I think some people, I know on the group, some people have said, oh, I don't feel valid in my story because I was only in hospital for 5 days, or I didn't go into septic shock, or it wasn't that severe. But at the end of the day, you still experienced a life-threatening illness. So in that way, I think everyone's story is valid, and connecting on that is really, really helpful for the healing process. So as I said, I was at university, still am. I'm studying psychology with counselling. So I sort of knew I wanted to go down that sort of therapy route, something like that. But experiencing sepsis, and not even just sepsis, experiencing such a profound trauma, I think has made me realize that I'm in a unique position where I'm a survivor, but I'm also a practitioner, in the sense that I have psychological knowledge and well-being knowledge that I could potentially help other survivors with. And I think it's one thing hearing a therapist sit there and give you advice, but hearing it from a survivor that's also got a professional background, I really hope will make a difference. I am. It's one step at a time, and that has been my motto throughout this whole thing. So much so that I'm going to get it tattooed on me for my first anniversary. Um, one step at a time, because you just got to take it as it comes, and it's going well at the moment. I definitely have days where I really struggle with my brain fog. I've struggled with flashbacks from it. My energy levels are just not the same. I'm really struggling with the fatigue, but I feel that I've got almost a newfound motivation for my degree, and I have decided to research sepsis as my dissertation. I think I would say, firstly, educate yourself, educate your loved ones. Um, Go onto the UK Sepsis Trust website, look at the resources. It's not, it's not a massive task with the reading, just educate yourself, but also be aware and be sensitive to the fact that there could be people around you that have gone through something this traumatic, and you may not understand, and but if you are there to listen, to try and support them in any way that you can, um I think that counts for a lot. I would say trust yourself, and this is something that I think specifically bowel patients, but I think as a general population, patients can often feel misunderstood or pushed aside by practitioners. But at the end of the day, you know your body better than anyone. If you don't think something is right, go and get it checked out. You're not wasting anyone's time. And at the end of the day, you'd rather catch something early than too late. So trust yourself, you know your body, and feel empowered that you do know what's best for yourself. Yeah, I think Martha's Rule is amazing, and I'm honestly, there's a part of me that's disappointed that that's not been the standard of care, that people don't feel that they are entitled to that. And I know that that was something that I've experienced, but I'm really glad that that has come into effect now, and people really need to understand that it's their health. And so it really doesn't matter what practitioners think or what other people may perceive, like, it's your health, that's the priority. And especially with bowel patients, I was told for years it was IBS, it was IBS, it was IBS, and actually it was Crohn's disease, and it had scarred my bowel. So you know your body, and definitely keep pushing for that. My practitioners that helped with my surgery and my sepsis were amazing at that time. They were incredibly supportive to myself and my family. My The thing that I feel afterwards is that the care stops once you've left hospital or once you've had your follow-up appointments. And I just feel that sepsis was never a priority, when actually it was one of the biggest things that has happened to me. It was the most traumatic thing I've been through. And so I think for like future practitioners, just check up on your patients' well-being. Make sure that they feel as informed as you are. And I think signpost as well, that it wouldn't hurt to just say to someone, hey, here's the UK Sepsis Trust. They can leave it at the door if they don't want it, but that was something that was never offered to me. So I just wish that there was some more post-sepsis care. Looks can be deceiving. The chances are someone's going to present themselves as looking okay because they want to feel okay. And I think it's just being patient, providing a nurturing space for someone to open up, and understanding that, you know, sepsis wasn't just this thing that happened to them and now it's over, is that it's going to be a thing in their life, potentially for the rest of their life as well. And I think it was really difficult for me to deal with those feelings of like feeling that I wasn't worthy of life or worthy of survival or love or those sorts of things, or feeling a bit damaged and having baggage. And I think by just constantly showing up for that person, constantly reminding them that they are important, that they are loved, that they do matter, and that you are glad they survived. I think that's really important, because sometimes it can be really tricky to listen to yourself, but when your support network are saying it as well, then I think it's really important.